Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Rob and I talk about high-end collectible comics and comics art. Subscribe if that's your kind of thing. I love to talk about comics and I post 1 or 2 videos a week doing just that. In this video, I'm introducing the next phase of an old project of mine. With my renewed focus on comics, thanks to this channel, I've revisited the Edgar Church Collection Data Project and have published a web interface for the data. This video will introduce the project by talking about the backstory and will introduce the new web interface for all of you to enjoy. So let's go. So quickly for some backstory, I announced the project on December 23rd, 2014, so over 10 years ago. Here's what I said at the time. I'm just going to read the blog post. I just launched a new open source project devoted to the Edgar Church collection. The goal is to create a generic store of data surrounding the collection. This will include a full listing of every book in the collection, the original catalog grade, the CGC grade, if applicable. And so this is where I started, right? And so this has actually been a very difficult project over the years. And I'll just talk about why a little bit. And I continue. The data right now is in 2 parts, only one of which is usable. Data.csv, a comma-separated values collection of a list that Artie, R2, from the boards put together a decade ago. So this was 20 years ago at this point. Obviously, the data needs to be updated, but the format is great, and the data, while outdated, is still valid as a snapshot of what the CGC census for the church collection looked like a decade ago. So as of this speaking, not of this writing, it's 20 years ago. And then I had the original catalog listing. As I said, I was sent this many years ago. I think it was Greggy on the forums as a hard copy, and I've always wanted this data in a format that I could search or use for visualizations. I've scanned it here for use in the project. So there is, if you go to that GitHub repository, there is a copy of the original Mile High catalog that I scanned and have had available on the web for a while. So I continued. The immediate goal is to extract the text from the scanned listing. From there, the basic data needs to be pushed into the CSV. After that, it just needs to be cleaned up and enhanced with publisher information about grades in later auctions and catalogs, non-CGC and the like. And then I talked about help, but I ended up figuring a lot of this out myself. I asked for help and didn't get any and just did it. So keep in mind that date, December 23rd, 2014. And then 15 months later, I released the first major version. Here's what I said at the time. This goes into how difficult this was. After a little over 15 months, countless hours of my own time, and 30 plus hours of paid assistance, I've finally gotten the Edgar Church Collection Data Project to a point where I can release it. What have I done so far? I've merged the original master list with an old list of CGC grades for the collection. On top of that, I've added, with the aforementioned assistance, dates and publishers to over 99% of the titles. I underestimated how long this would take when I started this in 2014. That's one of the reasons I ended up hiring folks to help out. I just wanted to get it to this point so that when I add updated data, it's already in a format that people can use. Even now, we've identified some areas of the data that need double checking. I just don't want to wait any longer. I'm never going to get to 100% accuracy, so holding out to move the needle from 95% to 97% before releasing it seemed like nonsense. Right now, the project offers 2 options for end users, a CSV containing all the data, and then a series of browsable resources on the GitHub site. So this is the way I presented it before. It was kind of simple. It is a little bit scary because it's GitHub. And so I just talk about that a little bit. So that was 2016, April 7th, 2016. And yeah, and so, things happened, and I never really pushed forward with anything beyond, kind of capturing information about church collection books that had been CGC graded, adding them to the GitHub site to eventually integrate the data. I have, over the last year, I've integrated the data. So I am up to date with anything that I knew about when I last researched this. And I think the last time I looked at this as from a research perspective was probably like 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. So I have plenty of research to do. And I have an existing issue on the GitHub site where I know that there are a bunch of books that have been listed on Heritage that I just do not have in this data set. So, but we're caught up with where I was at, from this 2016 period all the feedback I got around 2016, 2017, some research that I did myself in the late 2010s, and some recent research that I've done. So we're caught up there. And so now it's time to introduce edgarchurchdata.com. Link in the description. You are watching this on YouTube. I've been doing a lot of work on comics this past year. And as part of that, I've been eyeing the church data and wanting to get it out in a more easily usable format. edgarchurchdata.com is that format. What does the site do? It presents the current church data in a searchable, filterable format. I'll go through the features in the next few screens, but by all means, go check it out for yourself right now. It's easy to explore, and you should be able to just dive in and take a look at what's there. But let's take a look at the features, functionality, and some of the data. I just want to point out there are a few links. Obviously, it's just a website. On the left is, if you're technically inclined, there is a GitHub repo about this site and about the data. And if you want to help out, you can actually help out and just open a pull request or open an issue and send me data, and it's all very cool. I also, and I'm not going to talk about this much because I'm not really prepared to promote this, but this is actually an expensive project. It has cost me money over the years. There's hosting associated with it. If you find this data specifically valuable and you want to chip in a few bucks, there is a Patreon. Like I said, I'm not going to push it very hard at present on YouTube, but it's free for me to offer it. And if you find this data useful, please take a look at the Patreon and maybe throw me a few bucks to help offset the cost of this. Yeah. And then there's a download data button, which again, you can just download. There's a JSON file and a CSV in that download data link. So you can get your own copy of it. You can open it up in Excel. You can do all kinds of things. And if you're nerdy, you can have fun. Okay, one of the things that the application does, this new website does, is it presents collection statistics on the homepage. So fun little statistics. There are 15,000 records, 15,000 records. And I know that there are books that are missing. So the early actions, etc., aren't listed in here because they've never been CGC graded and they certainly weren't in the catalog. So we're still short of the total number. And that's one of the things that I actually have to talk about with people. And it's like, do we do that? Do we go and we know that, Dave has 1 to 24 of the actions. So we know that they exist. Do we put them in and just have no information about them at all, other than the fact that we know that they exist? I'm leaning in that direction, but I haven't actually decided. But anyway, as of right now, 15,066 total records, 165 unique publishers. The years span from 1934 to 1966, which is actually interesting to me. I'm going to have to dive in and find the book from 1966 and see what it is. And then this is fascinating to me. The average CGC grade of the 2036 graded comics, the average CGC grade is 8.9. So one thing I am going to do is map the letter grades in the original Mile High catalog listing to numbers behind the scenes so that I can get an average grade in the catalog. And then it'll be actually interesting to see the average grade in the catalog versus the average grade in CGC. But there, like I said, there are many, many, many CGC graded books I need to add. I know that I need to add, but again, I'm not going to let perfect get in the way of getting this in front of you. So there we go. Let's take a look at some features. So this is a split screen. Doesn't actually look like this. I'm showing two different things that happen. So the top, so there's a search bar, right? It says search all columns. And that's literally, it'll search every column in there. And you could search on 9.6, you could search on 9.8, you could search for a price, you could search whatever. But here I'm showing you that you can search for action comics, filters the list down to all of the action comics. And then you can search for timely. So this then filters a list down to all of the timelies. But like I said, you can filter on any one of the columns just using this search feature. And then at the column level, you can also filter. So in this situation, I filtered on Detective Comics on the title, which gives you exactly, all of the Detective Comics, which is cool. And one of the things that's really cool about that, and this is actually, I'm going to do a whole video at some point in the future on this next filter. So here you go. I've filtered on. So in the data, it's the Mile High Comics grade is just the old school numerical grading. It's like near mint plus, VF, good, fine, I think. I mean, it's not as, precise as we grade now. But anyway, if there isn't a grade listed, we indicate that it's not listed. So NL. So you can filter on NL and go through and look at all of the books that were not listed, which is really interesting because some of them make sense. The actions, of course, the actions weren't listed because anybody in their right mind that was offered this stack of actions would have bought them in advance. And we know that Chuck shopped some of the books around in advance to recoup the amount of money that he had to spend. But other of the books are very strange. There are many books that were not in the original Mile High catalog listing that just you don't understand why somebody bought them. And you do because the books were just available for sale at a couple of shows and, whatever, and before the catalog came out. So people just bought things. But it's still funny, some of the books that like were not listed are like Ace Comics number 71 was not listed. Why? I don't know. Somebody was like, I need an Ace Comics number 71. So that's a fun one, and that's going to launch into a video on its own. And with that, this video is done. It's a quick one just to introduce this. I really, really want you to go check it out, right? I want you to go check it out, play around, take a look. It's really pretty fun. And if you're into the church collection as much as I am, this is a really great window into the data. I'll ask you now, I'm going to ask you many times in the future, if you have data, if you have information about church books that are not in this list, you can send them to me. There's a contact form on the site. You can leave me a comment here. You can leave me a comment on GitHub. You can reach out to me on the CGC forums. I'm pretty easy to find. And I will mention, like I said, I'm not going to talk about it all the time, but in this context, I will mention it. The Patreon option is there. If you'd like to directly support work on things like the Edgar Church data and my other research, pedigree research, and some of those sort of things, that's the way to do it. In this situation, I'd really like to hire somebody, not full time, but 10, 20 hours a month, maybe 40 hours a month, 10 hours a week, something like that, to do baseline research for me. It was really helpful when I was doing this the first time around. Just like I had somebody local, I handed them the standard catalog of comic books, and I was like, take this Excel and put publishers and dates against all of these books. And she did, and it was incredible. And that's why you have publishers and dates for 15,000 books in the Edgar Church data. And with that, I'm done. Thank you. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you guys. I'm really happy to have gotten this out. It kind of struck me about 6 months ago, and I've found the time to do it recently, so that's pretty cool. Hopefully you enjoy it. Comments, let me know what you think. Please share. This one's going to go out on the CGC forum. I'm going to have a blog post about it where I write about this stuff as well. So there'll be several different places where you can comment on this and share data that I'm missing, etc. So thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.